Welcome to Debt Matters, the podcast where we break down the latest UK news stories shaping debt, collections, and financial pressure.
Glad to be here for this one.
Yeah, so today our focus is entirely on the Financial Conduct Authority publishing its final rules for deferred payment credit.
Right, which pretty much everyone just knows is buy now, pay later.
Exactly. And before we get into it, I want you, the listener, to just think about your last online shopping checkout experience.
Oh, yeah. It is literally everywhere now.
It really is. That spread the cost button has just become so common, almost unavoidable. So our mission today is to explore exactly what happens when a fast, friction-light payment method gets placed into a formal regulatory framework.
And we are going to look at what these specific rules mean for consumers, for lenders, and, of course, the debt collection industry starting July 15, 2026.
Right. So to understand why the FCA is stepping in now, we really first have to look at how rapidly this market just completely outgrew its original boundaries.
Yeah, the scale is just, well, it's wild when you actually look at the numbers.
It is. I mean, let's lay out the data the FCA provided. If we go back to 2017, this market was worth a mere 0.06 billion pounds.
Barely a blip on the radar.
Literally just a rounding error. But then fast forward to 2024, and that same market is over 13 billion pounds.
13 billion. Yeah.
And that's 10.9 million adults using these products in just the 12 months leading up to May 2024.
Which is 20% of UK consumers.
Right, 20%. So if you are standing in a queue at the grocery store, 1 out of every 5 people around you has used this.
Yeah, the volume is massive, but, volume alone doesn't usually trigger a regulatory overhaul like this.
Right, so what is the actual why here?
Well, the FCA identified a very specific risk factor. Their data shows that borrowers using buy now, pay later are just far more likely to be in financial difficulty than the general population.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so the regulator sees this 13 billion pound market, and they see a big chunk of its users already operating under serious financial pressure.
It's kind of like, imagine a neighborhood lemonade stand that accidentally turned into a multinational beverage corporation overnight.
That is a great way to put it.
But I want to push back on this a little bit. Does simply having a lot of users automatically mean a financial product is harmful? Or is the regulator reacting specifically to the type of consumer relying on it?
It's definitely the latter. The concern is that when a consumer is already struggling, having access to instant, unregulated credit, it often makes things worse, not better.
Because they can just stack up these debts invisibly.
Exactly. So because of this overlap between high usage and financial difficulty, the FCA is fundamentally changing how these loans are approved in the first place.
Which brings us to the new rules right at the checkout cart, adding friction to a frictionless checkout.
Yeah, the front-end rules are a huge shift. First off, lenders now have to carry out proportionate creditworthiness assessments before each and every agreement is taken out.
Wait, before every single transaction?
Every single one. And the kicker is that this applies even to transactions under 50 pounds.
Okay, let's just pause on that. If a lender has to run a credit check every single time someone buys, say, a 30-pound T-shirt,
right,
won't that completely alter the instant gratification that made the product so popular to begin with?
Oh, absolutely. That is the massive tension here. But now, pay later became a success precisely because it was so fast and required almost zero effort.
You just click the button and you're done.
Exactly. But now mandating these affordability checks for a 30-pound T-shirt, it adds very deliberate friction to that process.
And there's a second front-end rule too, right?
Yeah, lenders also have to provide much clearer product information. They have to help customers understand exactly what they're signing up for before they spread the cost.
So no more burying the terms in fine print.
No, it has to be front and center.
But practically speaking, for the listener who works in e-commerce or lending, this has to be a nightmare for conversion rates.
It undeniably is. It forces a pause in a process that was engineered to never pause. But the FCA's view is that this pause is necessary to protect consumers.
Right. But, even with all these upfront credit checks and disclosures, life happens.
It always does.
People lose jobs, emergencies come up, and payments still get missed.
Which leads us to the back-end rules. And this is the most crucial change for the collections industry.
What happens after the checkout when things go wrong?
Exactly. The regulations around missed payments are getting so much stronger. Lenders now must give clear notice before taking any action.
So no more surprise penalty fees without warning.
Right. And they also have to provide information about free debt advice. Plus, they must offer genuine support or forbearance for customers who are in financial difficulty.
It sounds like moving from a really casual handshake agreement to a formal, legally binding contract.
That's exactly what it is.
Instead of just trying to recover the funds as fast as possible, firms basically have to prove their homework now.
Yeah, they have to show clear evidence of support and communication. It's a much heavier burden of proof.
And if they don't do that homework, consumers now have a new way to complain, don't they?
They do. The FCA is expanding the compulsory jurisdiction of the Financial Ombudsman Service to cover these activities.
The FOS.
Yep. Which means consumers have a very clear, formal route for complaints if they feel they were treated unfairly or lent to irresponsibly.
So if we look at the wider collections industry, what is the core impact here?
Well, early-stage arrears handling is going to become much more structured. It has to be heavily documented and hyper-focused on consumer outcomes.
So collections aren't disappearing.
No, not at all. It's just about raising the standard of accountability. The informal days are over.
Which really forces lenders into a tight corner. This whole heavier burden of proof, the checkout friction, the ombudsman fees, it creates a huge commercial dilemma.
A massive balancing act.
Yeah.
Because the FCA does want to maintain trust, and they genuinely want to keep deferred payment credit widely available.
Right, they aren't trying to kill the industry.
Exactly. But they openly recognize that requiring these creditworthiness assessments will likely reduce the total number of transactions.
So they're trying to keep the product alive while intentionally weeding out the weaker, riskier lending decisions.
That's the tightrope they're walking. They've decided that the friction is justified if it actually reduces unsustainable borrowing.
But I have to ask, can a product built entirely on the premise of friction-light convenience actually survive when the regulations inherently demand friction?
That is the ultimate test. Providers are going to have to innovate really hard to make those checks as seamless as legally possible.
Yeah, but tying it all together, the main takeaway is that treating buy now, pay later as some sort of exception to the normal rules of consumer credit is officially ending.
Without a doubt, it is joining the heavily regulated mainstream.
So just to wrap up for the listener, by July 2026, buy now, pay later moves completely out of that light touch area and into a formal regulatory framework.
With very strict rules on approvals, missed payments, and dispute resolution.
Exactly. But before we go, I want to leave you with a new angle to ponder.
Go for it.
If the FCA successfully adds this friction to buy now, pay later, and they manage to remove riskier lending,
Right.
will those financially pressured consumers simply stop borrowing? Or will they just be pushed toward completely new, currently unmonitored forms of credit that haven't even been invented yet?
That is a very real possibility we'll have to watch out for.
It definitely is. Well, thank you all for joining Debt Matters. We'll catch you next time.